Hello and welcome to this video where I'm going to show you how to set up an Amazon Aurora AWS RDS database with Windows PowerShell. So to get started, we're going to have a look at the engine versions available. The first one we'll have a look at is MySQL. So you see in Aurora, there's 2 MySQL engines available. We also have Postgres available as well. So we can have a look, and there's 7 versions available. For this demonstration, we're going to use MySQL. So the first step is to create a cluster. Now, when you're using other RDS services, you don't need to create a cluster when you're creating a database instance. In Aurora, you need to create a cluster first, then you add your instances. You can add a single instance, as we're going to do in this demonstration. So in the parameters, we're going to set up an identifier, which is TechSnip cluster. And we're going to set up a master username and password, which will be used to access the database instance. I have a DB subnet group name specified of Aurora. You can omit this and just use the default subnet group name that comes with RDS. So we'll now pass those parameters into the commandlet new RDS DB cluster. So that returns information on the cluster fairly quickly, but the bit we're interested in at the moment is the status, and you'll see the status is actually creating. So if we use get RDS DB cluster, you can actually see it's still creating. So the cluster can take a few minutes for it to actually appear. So now you'll see the status has changed to available. So now we have a cluster created. Let's create an instance. So again, we have to set up our parameters for this. We have the DB instance identifier, or the database name, which is TechSnips1. We have the cluster identifier, which is the identifier we used previously to set up our cluster, the engine, and then we have the DB instance class. If you have a look at the URL above, this will give you guidance on which instance you should use for your database. I'm using db.t2.small. Multi-AZ is, will this be available in multi-availability zones? So we've set this to 0, and we've made it publicly accessible so that we can test this. So again, we pass this time to new RDS DB instance. So you'll see this time we're going to use get RDS DB instance, and we're going to look at one particular property, which is the status of it. So you'll see at the moment it's creating. Again, creating an instance can take anywhere between a few minutes up to 10 minutes. So now we've got the database available. So using mysql workbench, we can now check connectivity. So we'll use get RDS DB cluster, and we are going to check one of the properties, and it will give us the endpoint to connect to. So we take that and we create a new connection. I'm going to call this test. Our host name, which is our endpoint, we'll paste that in. Our username, which is TechSnipAdmin. Then our password. So we click on test connection. You'll see we've successfully connected, and then we click on OK. And then we can click on our connection. So this will actually open a connection to the database. And if we click on server status, you'll see we're connected to our Aurora MySQL server.